Hello and welcome back to the Calm Curator. I'm so glad you're here. Maybe you're listening at the same time you always do in the same place with the same drink beside you. Or maybe tonight is different, unfamiliar, and you're seeking something to hold on to. Either way, there's no wrong way to be here. I want to ask you something before we begin. What did you do this morning? Not the big things, the memorable moments, but the small, repeated gestures. Did you make coffee the same way you always do? Did you check your phone before your feet touched the floor? Did you follow a path through your home that your body knows by heart even in the dark? These things might seem insignificant. We rarely think about them. But tonight, we're going to explore why these small repetitions, these rituals, these routines, these patterns we return to again and again might be some of the most important things we do. Why humans have always needed them, why we still do, and what happens when we lose them. As always, I'm curious where you are in the world and what small rituals shape your days. Drop a comment below and share a piece of your routine with our community. Sometimes it's comforting to know we're all moving through our days in similar rhythms, even when we're far apart. So settle into wherever you are. Maybe adjust your position slightly, finding that spot where your body can truly rest. Take a slow breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, and let's begin this exploration together. Close your eyes for a moment if you're somewhere safe to do so and think back to this morning. Not to analyze it, just to notice it. The sequence of small actions that carried you from sleep to waking life. Maybe you reached for your phone. Maybe you lay there for a moment, gathering yourself. Maybe you got up immediately, your feet finding the floor before your mind was fully present. And then what? Did you shuffle to the kitchen? Did you fill a kettle, measure coffee, wait for water to boil? Did you stand at the counter in that half-awake state, watching steam rise, hearing familiar sounds, the click of the kettle, the gurgle of brewing coffee, the quiet morning sounds of a house or apartment coming to life? These actions, they're so automatic we barely register them. Our hands know what to do, our feet know where to go. We move through these morning sequences like dancers who have performed the same choreography 10,000 times. We don't think about it, we just do it. And there's something deeply comforting in that, isn't there? Something that helps us transition from the formless world of sleep into the structured world of waking. Something that says, you've done this before. You know how this goes, you're okay, this is ritual. Not in the grand sense of religious ceremony or cultural tradition, though we'll talk about those too, but in the most intimate, personal sense. The small, repeated patterns that give shape to our days, the rhythms we return to, the ways we anchor ourselves in time, and humans have always done this. Always, for as long as we've been human, maybe longer. We are creatures of pattern, of repetition, of ritual. It's woven into what we are. Let's go back, way back. Imagine our earliest ancestors tens of thousands of years ago. Long before cities, before agriculture, before writing or wheels or any of the things we think of as civilization. Just small groups of humans moving through landscapes, surviving. Life was unpredictable in ways we can barely imagine now. You didn't know if you'd find food tomorrow. You didn't know if the weather would turn deadly. You didn't know if predators lurked nearby, or if illness would strike, or if some accident would end everything in an instant. Uncertainty was the constant condition of existence. And yet, even then, especially then, humans created patterns. We established routines. We developed rituals. Every evening, as the sun began to set, someone would build a fire. Not randomly, not haphazardly, but in a specific way with intention. Gather kindling, arrange larger wood, coax flame from ember or spark, feed it carefully until it grows strong. This wasn't just practical, though it was that too. It was ritual, it marked the transition from day to night. It created a center, a gathering place, a point of light in the darkness. And people would come to that fire. They would sit in the same approximate places. The elders here, the young there, the storytellers where everyone could see them. Not because anyone mandated these positions, but because humans naturally create structure, naturally establish patterns. We find our places and return to them. Food would be shared, not thrown down carelessly, but distributed with attention, with care, with established order. The hunters who brought the meat received their portion. The gatherers who found roots and berries received theirs. Children were fed, the old were fed. There was an order to it, a ritual of sharing that reinforced bonds that reminded everyone of their place in the group, their value, their belonging. And then stories would be told, the same stories often told again and again, not because they'd been forgotten, but because repetition was the point. These stories carried the group's knowledge, their history, their understanding of how the world worked. Hearing them over and over wasn't boring, it was comforting. It was continuity. It said, we are still who we were yesterday and the day before and the day before that. We endure. These evening gatherings around the fire, they were ritual. They created a framework, a predictable pattern in an unpredictable world. They turned time from a formless flow into something with shape, with rhythm, with meaning. The same was true of seasonal observations. Our ancestors noticed patterns in nature, the movements of stars, the cycles of the moon, the return of certain plants or animals at certain times. And they marked these moments. They created ceremonies around them. When the first spring plants appeared, there would be celebration. When the herds migrated, there would be preparation rituals. When winter approached, there would be gathering ceremonies, storing food, yes, but also coming together to acknowledge the changing season, to prepare mentally and emotionally for the hard months ahead. These weren't superstitions exactly, or rather they were more than superstitions. They were ways of creating human time within natural time, ways of saying we notice these patterns, we honor them, we prepare ourselves. We don't just passively experience the turning of seasons, we participate in it, we mark it, we make it meaningful. And this is what ritual does at its heart. It takes the raw flow of time and gives it punctuation. It creates beginnings and endings, transitions and thresholds. It helps us move from one state to another with intention rather than just being swept along. Think about a wedding ceremony. Strip away the specific cultural details, the religious content, the particular traditions. At its core, what is it? It's a threshold ritual. It marks a transition from one state of being to another. Before this moment, you were not married. After this moment, you are. The ceremony creates a clear boundary, a before and after, a moment of transformation. Without ritual, that transition would still happen legally, perhaps. Papers could be signed, but something would be missing. The sense of gravitas, of significance, of crossing a threshold. The ritual isn't just decoration, it's how we make meaning, how we take an abstract concept like marriage and make it real, embodied, felt. The same is true of funerals, of birth celebrations, of coming-of-age ceremonies. Every culture has these threshold rituals, these ways of marking major life transitions. The specific forms vary wildly, some are elaborate, some simple, some solemn, some joyful. But the function is the same. To acknowledge change, to honor it, to help people move from one life stage to another with community support and recognition. Religious traditions are full of ritual, of course. Daily prayers at specific times, weekly gatherings, annual celebrations, prescribed ways of eating, of dressing, of moving through the world. From the outside, these can seem like arbitrary rules, but from the inside, they're something else entirely. They're a framework for living. A way of sanctifying time, of making ordinary moments sacred. Consider the Muslim call to prayer 5 times a day. It interrupts whatever you're doing, work, conversation, sleep, and calls you to pause, to orient yourself toward Mecca, to pray. It breaks time into segments. It says, stop. Remember what matters, reconnect with the sacred. 5 times a day, every day, creating a rhythm that structures not just the day but the entire life. Or think about the Jewish Sabbath. 1 day in 7, set apart, different from the others. A day of rest, of family, of study, of not doing in a world obsessed with doing. It creates a rhythm, 6 days of work, 1 day of rest, 6 days of ordinary time, 1 day of sacred time. That rhythm shapes the week, gives it contour, makes it something more than just 7 identical units. These religious rituals aren't just about belief, though belief is part of it. They're about creating structure, about establishing patterns that help people navigate time and life and change. They're about belonging to something larger than yourself, participating in traditions that stretch back generations, connecting you to ancestors and to community. Even if you're not religious, maybe especially if you're not religious, you can recognize the power of this. The comfort of knowing what comes next, the sense of continuity, of being part of a story larger than your individual life. The way ritual can make you feel held, supported, part of something that will continue after you're gone. Cultural festivals work the same way. The Chinese New Year, Diwali, Christmas, Ramadan, Thanksgiving. These aren't just holidays, they're annual punctuation marks, rhythms that structure the year. They're times when communities come together, when specific foods are prepared, when particular stories are told, when the ordinary rules of life are temporarily suspended and something special happens. Children especially feel this, the anticipation as the festival approaches, the familiar preparations, the knowledge that this has happened before and will happen again. That rhythm, that reliable, repeated pattern creates a sense of stability, of belonging, of being part of traditions that connect you to others. But let's bring this down to the personal level now, because you don't need religious tradition or cultural festivals to have ritual in your life. You already do, we all do. Our days are full of small, repeated patterns that we might not even recognize as rituals, but that serve the same essential functions. Your morning coffee, the specific way you make it, the particular mug you prefer, the amount of milk or sugar, the moment of that first sip. You probably do this the same way almost every morning, and if someone interrupted it, changed it, made your coffee wrong, you'd feel it. Not just that the coffee tasted different, but that something in your morning had gone wrong. The ritual was broken, or your evening routine. Maybe you wash your face the same way every night. Maybe you read in bed before sleeping. Maybe you check that the doors are locked, following the same path through your home, touching the same locks in the same order. These might seem like just practical actions, but they're more than that. They're signals to your body and mind. The day is ending. We are transitioning to sleep. This is the pattern. You're safe. Some people have a specific chair where they sit to think, to read, to be quiet. Some people take the same walk every day, following the same route. Some people journal, lighting the same candle before they write. Some people cook certain meals on certain days of the week, Sunday pasta, Friday pizza, whatever the pattern is. These personal rituals, they're not silly or OCD or superstitious. They're how we create structure in our lives. They're how we turn the formless flow of time into something with shape and rhythm. They're how we take care of ourselves. And here's what's interesting. When life gets chaotic, when we're stressed or anxious or overwhelmed, we tend to cling to these rituals more tightly. Or if we've lost them, we desperately want them back because ritual is stabilizing. Pattern is comforting. Knowing what comes next, even in small ways, helps us feel more in control when everything else feels out of control. Think about what happens when you're traveling, staying in an unfamiliar place. Even though you're in a hotel room or a friend's house, you probably try to recreate some of your rituals. You arrange your things in a certain way. You follow your morning routine as much as possible. You seek out that morning coffee even though the place is different. Why? Because these patterns are portable anchors. They help you feel like yourself even when everything else is strange. Or think about what happens during times of grief or crisis. People often report that maintaining their routines or struggling to maintain them becomes incredibly important. Getting up at the same time, making the bed, going through the motions even when nothing feels normal. These rituals don't fix the problem, don't make the grief go away, but they provide structure when everything else has fallen apart. They say, some things continue. Some patterns persist. You can hold on to this even when you can't hold on to anything else. This is why therapists often recommend establishing routines for people dealing with depression or anxiety, not as a cure, but as a support. Because when your mind is chaotic, when emotions are overwhelming, having external structure helps. Having patterns you can follow even when you can't think clearly, even when everything feels impossible, that's not trivial. That's essential. There's actual psychology behind this, actual neuroscience. Our brains love patterns. They're literally wired to seek them, to recognize them, to find comfort in them. When we encounter predictable patterns, when we follow familiar routines, our anxiety decreases. Our cognitive load lightens. We don't have to make as many decisions, don't have to think as hard, don't have to expend as much mental energy. This is why decision fatigue is real. Every choice we make depletes our mental resources slightly. By the end of a day full of decisions, we're exhausted, but routine ritual removes many of those small decisions. You don't have to decide what to have for breakfast if you always have the same thing. You don't have to decide whether to exercise if you always do it at the same time. The pattern is already established, you just follow it. This isn't about being rigid or inflexible. It's about creating a stable foundation so that when you do need to make decisions, when you do need to be flexible, you have the mental resources available. The routine parts of life run on autopilot, freeing up your conscious mind for things that actually need attention and creativity. Think about creative people, artists and writers and musicians. Many of them are famously ritualistic about their work. They write at the same time every day in the same place, following the same routine. Not because they're superstitious, but because the ritual puts them in the right mental state. It signals to their brain, now is the time for creativity. The familiar pattern creates a container within which inspiration can flow more easily. Maya Angelou rented the same hotel room every time she wrote. She'd arrive early in the morning with a bottle of sherry, a deck of cards, a Bible, and a dictionary. Same room, same items, same routine. Was this necessary for writing? Obviously not. Writing can happen anywhere. But for her, the ritual mattered. It created the mental and emotional space where her creativity could emerge. Beethoven counted out exactly 60 coffee beans for his morning cup. Tchaikovsky took a 2-hour walk every afternoon at exactly the same time, believing that if he cut the walk short, disaster would follow. Again, these weren't necessary for their music. But the rituals gave structure to their days, created reliable patterns within which their unpredictable creative work could happen. We might not all be composing symphonies, but the principle applies to any kind of focused work. The ritual, the pattern, the routine creates a container. It tells your brain, this is the time, this is the place, this is the state we enter now. And your brain, loving patterns as it does, responds. The work becomes easier to start, easier to sustain, because you're working with your neurological wiring rather than against it. Ritual also strengthens memory and identity. When you repeat actions in the same way, in the same sequence, you're literally creating neural pathways, making those patterns more automatic, more deeply ingrained. But more than that, you're creating continuity in your sense of self. Think about it, you are not the same person you were 10 years ago. Your cells have been replaced, your thoughts have changed, your knowledge has grown, your relationships have shifted. In what sense are you still you? One answer is, through continuity of pattern, you still make your coffee the same way. You still have the same morning routine, more or less. You still prefer the same chair, take the same walk, follow similar rhythms. These repeated patterns create a thread of continuity through time. They connect past you to present, you to future, you. They help you feel like a coherent self rather than a series of disconnected moments. This is why losing your routine can feel so destabilizing. When you move to a new place, start a new job, go through a major life change, suddenly all your familiar patterns are disrupted. You don't know which coffee shop to go to, you don't know what route to take. You don't have your comfortable chair, your familiar spaces, your established rhythms. And it's disorienting even when the change is positive. Because you've lost those threads of continuity, those repeated patterns that help you know who you are. Eventually, you build new patterns, new routines emerge, new rituals establish themselves, and slowly you start to feel grounded again. Not because anything external has changed necessarily, but because you've recreated that internal structure, that rhythm, that sense of familiar pattern. Ritual also connects us to time in a particular way. Not just present time, but past and future time. Every time you perform a ritual, especially one you've done for years, you're connecting to all the other times you've done it. Every cup of coffee connects to every other cup of coffee. Every walk connects to every other walk. You're not just experiencing this moment, you're experiencing the accumulated weight of all those moments, the continuity across time, and this connects you to your past self. To childhood rituals perhaps, to family traditions, to the person you were before, to the moments and days and years that brought you here. Ritual is a form of time travel in a way. It lets you touch the past while standing in the present. This is especially powerful with inherited rituals, traditions passed down through families or communities. When you prepare your grandmother's recipe exactly as she taught you, you're connecting to her across time. When you celebrate holidays the way your family always has, you're participating in a pattern that includes generations of your ancestors. You're adding your link to a chain that stretches back into the past and forward into the future. I remember my grandmother had a specific way of making tea, not just brewing it but the whole ritual around it. The particular cups she used, kept in a specific cabinet, the way she warmed the pot first, the exact amount of time she let it steep, the small plate of cookies that always appeared, the way she poured, holding the pot just so. As a child, I didn't think much about it. It was just how tea happened at her house. But now, decades later, when I make tea, I sometimes find myself doing it her way, using the same gestures, the same sequence, and for a moment, she's present again. Not just as a memory, but as a felt presence woven into the action of making tea. The ritual carries her forward through time. It lets me touch that connection again, lets me be with her in a way that pure memory can't quite achieve. This is what inherited rituals do. They're not just habits we copy. They're threads of connection across generations. They let us participate in patterns our grandparents knew, our great-grandparents knew, stretching back through time. When you perform a ritual that's been in your family for generations, you're not alone in that moment. You're accompanied by everyone who came before, everyone who performed that same ritual, who found meaning in those same gestures. There's something deeply comforting about this, something that makes our individual lives feel less fragile, less isolated. We're not just alone in the present moment, we're part of a pattern, a tradition, a continuity of ritual that connects us to others across time. This is what anthropologists mean when they talk about ritual as a form of social bonding. When a community performs rituals together, whether that's a religious service, a cultural celebration, or just the weekly gathering at a local cafe, they're creating shared experience, shared memory, shared identity. They're saying we are a we, not just a collection of separate individuals. These patterns bind us together, and this has always been essential for human survival. We're social creatures, we need each other, we need to belong. Ritual is one of the primary ways we create and maintain that belonging. It's how we say, you're part of this, you're one of us, you belong here. But here's what's interesting about our current moment in history. We're living in an age that has weakened many traditional sources of ritual. We're more isolated, more individualized, more mobile, more digital. The rhythms that structured human life for thousands of years have been disrupted in just a few generations. Think about how different life is now compared to even 50 years ago. Most people didn't move far from where they were born. Extended families lived near each other. There were strong community bonds, neighborhoods, churches, social clubs. There were shared rhythms, shops closed on Sundays, families ate dinner together, there were designated times for work and rest. Much of that has dissolved. We move for jobs, for opportunities, leaving family and community behind. We work irregular hours. We eat dinner whenever, often alone, often in front of screens. Shops never close. The internet never sleeps. There's no clear boundary between work time and rest time, between public and private, between connection and solitude. The pandemic made this even more apparent. Suddenly, all our external rituals vanished. No commute to mark the transition between home and work. No office routines, no coffee shop stops, no gym visits. No gatherings with friends, no religious services, no community events. Everything collapsed into an undifferentiated blur of being home, all the time, with no external structure to organize our days. And people struggled, not just with isolation, though that was real, but with the formlessness. The lack of rhythm, the way days bled together with no markers, no transitions, no sense of progression. Work time and leisure time mixed into an exhausting soup. Weekdays and weekends felt the same. Time became strange, elastic, disorienting. Those who coped best were often those who created new rituals, who established routines, deliberately getting dressed even though no one would see them, taking walks at specific times, creating clear boundaries between work and rest even though everything was happening in the same space. They rebuilt structure in the absence of external structure. They created ritual when all the usual rituals had been taken away, and were more anxious than ever, more depressed, more lonely, more overwhelmed. Is that a coincidence? I don't think it is. I think the loss of ritual, the loss of rhythm and pattern and routine leaves us unmoored. Time becomes a formless flow. Days blur together. We lose track of where we are when we are who we are. Everything feels simultaneously urgent and meaningless. We're always busy but never quite sure what we're busy with or why. The digital world especially disrupts ritual. Social media and smartphones have no natural stopping points. You can scroll forever, you can work at any hour, you can be connected to everyone and no one simultaneously. There's no rhythm to it, no pattern, no punctuation. It's just a constant, undifferentiated flow of information and stimulus. And our nervous systems aren't built for this. We're built for rhythm, for day and night, for work and rest, for seasons. For repeated patterns that help us orient ourselves in time. Without these rhythms, we become unmoored, anxious, exhausted. But here's the hopeful part: we can reclaim ritual. We can choose to create patterns, to establish routines, to build rhythm back into our lives. Not because someone is requiring it of us, not because of religious obligation or cultural tradition, but simply because it helps. Because we need it, because we're human, and humans have always needed ritual. This doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be religious or traditional or borrowed from any particular culture. It can be entirely personal, entirely yours. It just needs to be intentional, repeated, meaningful to you. Maybe it's starting your morning slowly, not checking your phone immediately. Maybe sitting with your coffee for 10 minutes, just sitting, noticing the warmth of the mug, the smell, the quiet of the early morning. Not doing anything productive, just being present for that small ritual of transition from sleep to waking. Maybe it's a walk at the same time each day, not for exercise necessarily, though that's good too, but as a ritual, a pattern, a way of marking time. Same route, same time, creating a daily rhythm that punctuates your day, that gives it structure. Notice what you see on that walk, the same trees changing with the seasons, the same houses, the lives inside them shifting and evolving while the structures remain, the same corner where light hits in a particular way. These repeated observations become part of the ritual. You're not just walking, you're checking in with a familiar landscape, noting what's changed and what's stayed the same, grounding yourself in place and time. Some people walk the same route every morning and find it boring, but others find it meditative, comforting. Each walk is the same and different. The route is familiar, but the light is different, the weather is different, your inner state is different. The repetition creates a container within which you can notice subtle changes in the world, in yourself. Maybe it's lighting a candle before you sit down to work or to think or to read. That small gesture marking a transition, creating a boundary. Before this moment, regular time. During this time, focused time. After this moment, back to regular time. The candle marks that boundary, makes it real, helps your mind shift states. There's something primal about fire, about light in darkness. Our ancestors gathered around fires for hundreds of thousands of years. That association is deep in us. When you light a candle, you're tapping into something ancient, even if you're just sitting at a desk in a modern apartment. The flame creates a focal point, a center. It marks the space as special, as different from ordinary space. And when you blow it out, that's a ritual too. It marks the end. It says, this focused time is complete. I'm transitioning back. The ritual has a beginning and an end, and that structure helps your mind know what mode it's in. Maybe it's cooking a real meal once a week. Not quickly, not efficiently, but slowly with attention. Following a recipe, preparing ingredients, taking your time, and then eating it without screens, without distraction. Just you and the food and the quiet satisfaction of having created something with your hands. Maybe it's a bedtime routine that you treat as sacred, putting your phone away an hour before sleep, washing your face slowly, reading a few pages of something calming. Darkening the room, settling in, giving your body and mind clear signals. We're transitioning now. The day is ending. Sleep is coming. This is the pattern. These might seem small. They might seem insignificant compared to traditional religious rituals or cultural celebrations. But they're not. They're how we create structure in our individual lives. They're how we build rhythm and pattern and meaning into ordinary days. They're how we take care of ourselves. And here's what I've noticed. When people start doing this, when they reclaim ritual even in small ways, something shifts. They report feeling calmer, more grounded, less anxious. Not because anything external has changed, but because they've created internal structure. They've given their days shape. They've reconnected to rhythms that human beings need. This is especially important now, I think. In this fast, formless, always connected world, we need anchors more than ever. We need patterns that help us know where we are in time. We need transitions that help us shift between different modes of being. We need rituals that remind us who we are and connect us to continuity across time. Ritual doesn't have to be a cage. It doesn't have to be rigid or confining. At its best, ritual is the opposite. It's liberating. It provides a stable foundation so that we can be flexible everywhere else. It handles the repetitive parts of life automatically so we can be present and creative for the parts that matter. Think of it like this: a river needs banks. Without them, water spreads out, becomes a shallow, formless marsh. With banks, water flows, has direction, has power. Ritual is like those banks. It channels our energy, gives our days direction, helps us flow rather than spread out into formless anxiety. And ritual connects us to ourselves across time, to our ancestors, to our communities, to patterns larger than our individual lives. In a world that often feels fragmentary and disconnected, that connection is precious. It reminds us that we're part of something larger, something that existed before us and will continue after us. You don't have to embrace someone else's rituals, someone else's traditions. You can create your own. You can establish patterns that make sense for your life, your needs, your values. The form doesn't matter as much as the function, creating rhythm, marking transitions, bringing intention to repeated actions, connecting present moments to past and future moments. So maybe tonight, before you go to sleep, think about your rituals, the ones you already have, perhaps without realizing it, the ones you've lost that you might want to reclaim, the ones you might want to create, small patterns that could give your days more shape and meaning. What would help you feel more grounded? What would help you transition more smoothly between different parts of your day? What repeated action could you infuse with more intention, turning it from merely habitual into truly ritual? You don't have to decide anything tonight. You don't have to change anything. Just notice, pay attention. Become aware of the patterns already in your life and the patterns that might serve you better. Because here's the truth. Life is going to keep flowing forward whether we create patterns in it or not. Time will keep passing. Days will keep coming. But ritual, routine, pattern, these are how we participate actively in that flow rather than just being swept along by it. These are how we shape our experience of time rather than being shaped by it. And in a world that moves too fast, that demands too much, that never stops, the simple act of creating intentional patterns of saying, "This is when I wake, this is when I pause, this is when I rest, this is how I mark the day," that's not trivial. That's not small, that's profound. That's taking agency over your life in one of the few ways we actually can. We can't control what happens to us. We can't stop time. We can't prevent change or loss or difficulty. But we can create rituals. We can establish patterns. We can build rhythms that help us feel held by time rather than swept away by it. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. Thank you for spending this time with me, exploring something so fundamental yet so often overlooked. If these reflections stirred something in you, if they made you think about your own patterns and rituals, I'd love to hear about it. What are the small rhythms that structure your days? What rituals do you want to reclaim or create? Share in the comments. There's something powerful about naming these patterns, about acknowledging their importance. If this quiet exploration resonated with you, give the video a like and subscribe to the Calm Curator. We'll keep meeting here, keep exploring these questions about how to live thoughtfully in a fast world, keep sitting together with ideas that help us find our footing. Before you go tonight, maybe take a moment. Notice where you are. Notice what time it is. Notice how you'll transition from this moment of listening into whatever comes next. Can you make that transition intentional? Can you mark it somehow, standing up slowly, taking a breath, acknowledging this ending and whatever beginning follows it? That's ritual too. That's taking one moment and making it matter, making it conscious, making it yours. Until we meet again, may you find rhythms that ground you. May you create patterns that serve you. May you discover that routine isn't a cage but a home, a structure within which you can truly rest. Take care of yourself. Move gently through your days, and remember, you get to decide what patterns shape your life. That power is always yours, even when nothing else is. Good night, and thank you for being part of this community, for choosing to spend your time this way, in this pattern we're creating together.